Everyone has heard the stories about Smokey Yunick's legendary garage. People imagine a locked building filled with outlaw race cars, secret engines, and inventions so controversial that NASCAR wanted them hidden forever. But when Smokey passed away from leukemia on May 9, 2001, the truth turned out to be even more remarkable. When the doors of his famous Daytona Beach workshop finally opened, people didn't find a secret vault. They found something much more important. Hidden among everyday tools and dusty shelves were ideas that had challenged Detroit, frustrated racing officials, and changed motorsports forever. But what exactly did people discover when the best damn garage in town was finally open to the public? Just weeks after Smokey's funeral, hundreds of racing fans traveled from across America to a modest building on North Beach Street in Daytona Beach. Some came from as far away as Maine and Oregon, hoping to own a small piece of racing history. Instead of a private auction for collectors, Smokey's family held a public garage sale. The man who had built one of the most famous workshops in racing had always believed his tools should keep working instead of sitting behind museum glass. That decision made the event unlike anything fans had ever seen. Smokey had opened the garage back in 1947 and spent decades building a reputation as one of the most brilliant and controversial mechanics in racing. Then, in 1987, he closed the shop, claiming there simply weren't enough good mechanics left. For years, the building remained almost untouched. When his family finally sorted through everything during Speed Weeks in 2002, they discovered a workshop frozen in time. But one item immediately stood out from everything else. Why was one engine attracting more attention than anything in the building? Visitors found ordinary tools priced at just a few dollars sitting beside race car parts, stacks of hubcaps, exhaust pipes, old dealership signs, Smokey's well-used typewriter, and one hand-built engine carrying an unbelievable claim. According to Smokey, it could deliver 80 miles per gallon. The asking price was $20,000. His wife Marge joked that the place looked like a junkyard, but a first-class junkyard. Beneath the clutter sat decades of creativity that had never stopped pushing the limits of engineering. The sale reflected exactly how Smokey had lived. He loved rescuing forgotten machines and putting them back to work. He never wanted wealthy collectors locking away his life's work. Instead, the proceeds from the sale helped create a foundation dedicated to encouraging innovation in motorsports. His daughter, Trish Yunick Brown, later explained that while people were buying physical objects, she was keeping something much more valuable, her father's stories. But those stories only became more fascinating when people looked closer at the engines he left behind. What made them so different from anything Detroit had built? Among the most valuable discoveries were Smokey's famous hot vapor engines. These weren't unfinished experiments or wild ideas. They were working machines that had already proven themselves. While most manufacturers relied on computers to improve fuel economy, Smokey chose a completely different path. Starting with a simple 2.5-liter Pontiac Fiero engine that normally produced around 90 horsepower, he transformed it into something extraordinary. His modified version produced around 250 horsepower and 250 pound-feet of torque while still delivering an incredible 51 miles per gallon. Even more impressive, it met strict emissions standards without using modern electronic engine controls. That combination sounded almost impossible during the 1980s. So how did Smokey make it happen? Instead of cooling the air and fuel mixture, Smokey heated it using waste heat from the engine itself. By completely turning the fuel into vapor before combustion, the engine burned far more efficiently than traditional designs. It ran on an extremely lean fuel mixture while producing far more power than anyone expected. Independent engineers and Detroit laboratories confirmed the results. These weren't exaggerated claims. The performance numbers were real. The original concept actually began in the 1950s through Smokey's partnership with Holley carburetor expert Ralph Johnson. Together, they built several working prototypes, including versions based on Buick, Ford, and Dodge vehicles. Each delivered more than 45 miles per gallon while producing remarkable power. Production deals nearly happened more than once. Yet every opportunity eventually collapsed because of durability concerns, legal costs, manufacturing challenges, and one familiar problem. The industry often rejected ideas simply because they came from someone outside the establishment. But what happened to those incredible engines after Smokey died? Fortunately, they survived. Trish Yunick Brown kept 4 of the original engines, while enthusiast Tony Allers acquired several working examples. He carefully restored one into a daily-driven Pontiac Fiero that remained fully operational for years. On Christmas Day in 2009, he donated that remarkable car to the Don Garlits Museum of Drag Racing, where visitors can still see it today. Another engine has reportedly spent years on loan to the Smithsonian. If technology like this existed decades ago, many people still wonder why it never reached mass production. But Smokey's engines represented only part of his legacy. His ideas stretched far beyond fuel economy. Throughout his career, he filed patents covering fuel systems, oil systems, engine testing methods, and even racetrack safety. His inventions proved he wasn't simply modifying race cars. He was trying to solve problems the entire automotive industry faced. So which of his ideas caused the biggest battles with racing officials? Government patent records show Smokey received at least 9 patents between 1978 and 1996. Several protected the hot vapor engine technology itself, covering both the equipment and methods behind the design. Others focused on practical improvements, including oil change systems, pressure vents, and engine testing equipment. Many of these patents eventually entered the public domain, allowing future engineers to study his work freely. Some of his greatest frustrations came from safety innovations. In 1961, he introduced pneumatic air jacks that could lift race cars almost instantly during pit stops. NASCAR rejected them. The following year, he experimented with an aerodynamic wing mounted high above an Indianapolis race car. Officials quickly banned that too. Ironically, wings later became standard equipment across many forms of racing. But perhaps his most overlooked idea involved protecting drivers themselves. Years before modern safer barriers appeared at racetracks, Smokey proposed a crash barrier using layers of old tires and heavy plywood to absorb impacts. NASCAR showed little interest at the time. Only decades later did softer impact barriers become a standard part of major speedways. Looking back today, it's difficult not to wonder how many injuries might have been prevented had his idea been accepted sooner. The same pattern appeared every time Smokey built a race car. He constantly searched for legal advantages that others failed to notice. Nothing demonstrated that better than the famous Chevrolet Chevelle many fans still call the 7/8 scale car. But was that legendary story actually true? The popular myth claims Smokey secretly built an undersized Chevelle that fooled NASCAR inspectors. In reality, the car wasn't dramatically smaller at all. Instead, Smokey made dozens of subtle aerodynamic improvements. He shifted the body slightly backward on the chassis, reshaped airflow underneath, adjusted the windshield angle, modified the roofline, and even altered the front bumper to reduce drag. Individually, the changes look minor. Together, they created a much faster race car. When NASCAR inspectors realized something unusual was happening, they struggled to inspect the cars consistently. Their solution eventually became standardized body templates, a system that still influences inspections today. One of Smokey's Chevelles helped Curtis Turner become the first driver to qualify at more than 180 miles per hour at Daytona. Smokey later dismissed the 7/8 scale rumor himself, explaining that careful engineering, not shrinking the car, had made the difference. His creativity extended even further. Smokey famously used extra-long fuel lines to increase total fuel capacity without technically violating the rules. Countless stories surrounded offset chassis, hidden advantages, and inspections that left officials scratching their heads. To Smokey, these weren't acts of dishonesty. He believed everyone else was already pushing the rules just as hard. He simply did it better. But perhaps the most personal thing he left behind wasn't a race car or an engine. It was his own words. As leukemia limited his time, Smokey completed a massive autobiography titled Best Damn Garage in Town. Published after his death as a 3-volume collection containing more than 1,100 pages and over 400 photographs, it became the most complete record of his life and ideas. Rather than relying on myths or exaggerated stories, readers could finally hear Smokey explain everything in his own voice. The book also revealed the tragedy that changed his relationship with NASCAR forever. In 1964, his close friend Fireball Roberts suffered a terrible crash at Charlotte and died 40 days later from his injuries. The loss deeply affected Smokey. He devoted himself to improving racing safety, especially fuel cells, but repeatedly found his proposals rejected by NASCAR founder Bill France Sr. Frustrated by constant resistance, Smokey eventually walked away from the organization around 1970. His autobiography also discussed his military service during World War II. While some of Smokey's personal memories have been debated, official military records confirm he served from 1944 to 1946, achieved the rank of second lieutenant, earned an Air Medal, and served with the 15th Air Force. His documented accomplishments alone were impressive enough without embellishment. On the racing side, the numbers speak for themselves. Smokey collected 57 NASCAR Cup Series victories, won 2 championships as an owner and crew chief, captured the 1960 Indianapolis 500 as chief mechanic, and became the first owner to win back-to-back Daytona 500s in 1961 and 1962. Over time, he earned induction into more than 30 motorsports halls of fame, including the inaugural class of the International Motorsports Hall of Fame. The garage itself eventually disappeared. Following Smokey's wishes, the property was sold in 2003. Most of the buildings were later demolished, and the final structure was destroyed by fire on April 25, 2011. But by then, the most valuable pieces had already found new homes. The hot vapor Fiero remained in a museum. Prototype engines survived with collectors and family members. Original tools, signs, and equipment spread into workshops and collections across the country. More importantly, Smokey's influence never disappeared. Modern NASCAR inspection templates trace their roots back to his carefully modified Chevelles. Pneumatic air jacks and aerodynamic wings became common throughout other racing series. His early crash barrier concepts helped inspire later safety improvements. Engineers continue studying his hot vapor patents in search of greater engine efficiency. In the end, the real story of Smokey Yunick's garage turned out to be far more powerful than the myths. There were no hidden government raids, secret underground vaults, or forbidden blueprints. Instead, there was clear evidence of one brilliant engineer who constantly challenged conventional thinking. The public sale, the surviving engines, the patents, and his own autobiography all tell the same story. Smokey Yunick wasn't remembered because he broke the rules. He was remembered because he forced everyone else to rewrite them.